Welcome to William Steele True Crime and Steele Spotlight Television, and also now Public Relations. We're getting that off the ground. Thank you for joining. We're circling back on a very, very important cold case, what we believe to be homicide, killing, and admitted killing of an unarmed individual by the name of Ryan Modell in Florida. And his father, Sandy, is back joining us again with updates. And Samantha Markle is back again. She's a wonderful crime victim advocate as well. And so we want to keep publicity on this case and the fact that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, although he puts himself up there as tough on violent crime, we can prove that he's not in this particular case. So Sandy, Samantha, thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Sandy, you want to take it from the top, maybe give a little background on the case so the newer viewers can get caught up in general, and then let us know the updates. I know you put some billboards up, really important billboards.
The case goes back 7 years. My son was unarmed, knocked on the wrong door. Owner told him to go away. He left. And the owner stayed in his home for 3 or 4 minutes and then decided to get his gun and go out looking for my son, which is pursuit. And then he found him and he provoked him. And then when my son stood up, he decided to shoot and basically address the problem that he had caused. All 3 of those things are in violation of stand your ground. The state attorney down there was a chief deputy and she was running for office. And while she was running for office, she was courting the NRA. And she used this as an excuse to give them a case that supports stand your ground, even though she's never been able to explain how it qualifies. She's been asked by journalists and all kinds of people, explain how this is stand your ground because it violates all the stand your ground precepts and all, but she's never been willing to explain it. She can't. Additionally, ironically, actually, the stand your ground statute is about 5,000 words long. And of all those words, the word they used to explain it doesn't appear. They said it had to do with curtilage, property curtilage.
It's not there.
It's not in 5,000 words. It has nothing to do with stand your ground. That's what it's the only word they've ever used to explain it. But the bottom line is this. It's been looked at by attorneys, by former state attorneys, by people in the legal profession, people in the journalism that are very familiar with state law. And everyone has seen it as a murder. It's just the state attorney used it, and she was courting the NRA quite heavily. During her campaign, she would take time off as chief deputy, not unpaid. She would just drive off, go up to Tallahassee, pretend that she had to go to meetings, but always stop by the NRA and brought the head of their NRA some chocolate and took her out to lunch. Basically spent a lot of time on state time courting the NRA. Eventually, she was found to have been guilty of that. She claims she only had to reimburse them about $1,100, but it was just part and parcel of what she was doing.
Right. It sounds like, and then I know at one point the governor gets involved. He says he's going to help or indicate he will help to move the case. You wrote a book about this, Murder and Corruption in Florida, which Mark O'Mara, a prominent attorney, wrote a foreword for you, I believe.
Correct. The governor, I'd met him when he campaigned the first time around, indicated that he agreed with me and this is something should be addressed. All I've ever been looking for was have the case moved from the jurisdiction of what is obviously a corrupt state attorney, move it to another jurisdiction. Absolutely. And make it an independent, objective, honest review.
Exactly.
I'd like Samantha to chime in and because she's had a few months to digest a lot of this, and we all have. And then I want you to tell us what kind of person your son was, and what you do and why you're so. This is important to anybody who has a loved one that was killed by somebody. Samantha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. See, as you said, Sandy, I looked at this and what is so glaring to me is the fact that there was no imminent danger existing. Therefore, this couldn't have qualified as stand your ground. Clearly, as was articulated by the occupants, by Mr. Taylor and his wife in the house, they had closed the door. Ryan walked away. They expressed to the 911 or the dispatcher that, they understood seemingly that it was a case of knocking on the wrong door and it was just some kid. They didn't seem to feel threatened or in danger, and therefore they were also already safe. The door was locked. They were inside their own home. And it seems odd to me then that Mr. Taylor would feel the need to, after the door was locked, unlock it, grab a firearm, go outside and pursue your son.
Well, the problem is
There
a
was
lot
no
of
more imminent danger. There was no
statements he gave indicated he was either embarrassed in front of his wife or he was angry. There was no fear there. He went out there angry. As the lead detective on the case called this a murder and said, scared people don't go back outside. Angry people do.
Right.
Well, and the other thing too, I think there's, when we talk about the guilty mind requirement and homicide or premeditated murder, he actually had to stop and think and get a firearm. Now, if you go pick up a firearm and you pursue someone with it outside of the safety of your own home, that's a calculated act.
Absolutely.
There's, that's premeditated to some degree. So you almost can't even say second degree murder because there was no fight ensuing.
The lead detective never said second degree. He said murder.
It is murder because he picked up a gun, he calculated it, went outside and killed your son. And so I guess what I was thinking then, just like you said, it seemed necessary to move the venue.
Well, the police called it a murder. We gave them additional evidence later on after there was a deposition. They claimed originally the timeline was loose. We got depositions because of a civil suit. And when that came out, the detective and the chief of police was great. The chief of the sheriff, rather, of Lee County Sheriff's Department said, this is additional information. They did a second investigation and they concluded more adamantly that it was murder so that they could convince the state attorney to file it. And she refused.
And based on that refusal and the fact that there seems to me to be a clear conflict of interest and, in my opinion, some misconduct, it's not up to a DA or an ADA to make up the law and make up what they think is the law and decide to prosecute or not. It had been stated by investigators that this was a homicide. Therefore, the burden is on her in her position as a prosecutor to go ahead and prosecute and to try it and to leave all of the fact finding up to a jury. So she decided she was going to play God.
Well, she has
the whole thing, and decide if she's even going to allow it to get to the stage of a jury.
She has privately told people she's angry that I campaigned, I supported her opponent during that election. And she has made it clear that's why the case, it has nothing to do with the merits of the case. It has to do with she doesn't like the victim's father.
God forbid, what if one of her children was killed like this? We don't encourage anything like that. But, how disgusting are these people? And now the governor being aware of it and he's running on, part of his thing is he's tough on crime. He's a former prosecutor. NRA members that I spoke to don't find this a stand your ground case. So I don't even know what the heck they're talking about.
That example, most responsible gun owners don't support that. It's not the idea that you can use stand your ground as a hall pass for murder. And that's the case.
I'd like to see here's a message to Governor DeSantis. Please show us as Floridians where it is written that under prosecutorial discretion, an ADA can decide that he or she does not like someone and therefore does not have to prosecute for murder.
Well,
you show me that loophole. And I think Governor DeSantis, I think the burden here is that, for all of us Floridians watching, that we feel safe in this state, that we feel as if, something happens to us or to a family member, that justice will be done. And that it's not up to a district attorney or an ADA to decide that he or she doesn't like someone. Therefore, the law all of a sudden becomes obsolete. Give me a break.
Well, right now, you are safe in your homes if the state attorney feels like prosecuting the law. If not, you're taking your chances. And that's basically what the governor has said here. So my response was to write a book and to try and generate more attention. But there have been updates. You knew all that, but there have been updates since then. DeSantis has made it clear, and he's made it clear for the last couple of years, all he's interested in is becoming president or running for president. And so He was afraid of tangling with the NRA and losing an endorsement there. He was afraid of tangling with the Republican Party in the state and tangling with the state attorney. He has since, there are only 20 state attorneys in the state of Florida. He has fired 2. And he's fired 2 for very, very thin reasonings. He just didn't like the way they were thinking. One district attorney, state attorney gave an opinion on something. DeSantis didn't like it, fired him. Did it with 2 state attorneys. You go, well, at least he's pruning the tree. No. There are 20 state attorneys, only 4 are Democrats. He has fired 2 of them just for expressing an opinion, whereas he's let the state attorney in Southwest Florida ignore multiple murders. This isn't the only one. She's ignored multiple murders. She has actually interfered with grand jury proceedings and been the subject of a Pulitzer Prize-winning article or coverage on her misbehavior. So the governor's made it pretty clear he'll allow the Republican state attorneys to do what they want. But if you even look the wrong way, he's going to use that as an excuse for Democratic state.
We're referring to Fort Myers, Amira Fox, I believe her name was, right?
She's the corrupt state attorney down in Southwest Florida, yeah. But he got rid of Andrew Warren in Hillsborough, and he got rid of the recent state attorney in Orange County. And he cited other governors when he did it. But in fact, Governor Rick Scott had a similar problem with a state attorney in Orlando about 7-8 years ago, not prosecuting cases the way he wanted, basically looking for murder convictions. As a result, he took from her office any case that was likely to be a murder penalty case or a death penalty case, but left her in office. He didn't overstep. DeSantis has overstepped in 2 cases, and those happen to be 2 of the 4 state attorneys in the state of Florida. But Amira Fox has ignored murders and all kinds of stuff, and it's just been something he's overlooked. That's why.
Well, what I'm feeling, regardless of, I'm a Republican, so regardless of party lines, and I especially think for those of us who are conservative, we expect to feel safe in our state. We expect the rule of law to be upheld, especially with something as egregious as homicide. So that being said, I don't think it matters if you're a Democrat or a Republican. This needs to be prosecuted. And honestly, I was kind of happy at one point when Ron DeSantis was seemingly loyal to Donald Trump, and I thought they would make a great pair. And I was rooting for him, but I'm in retrospect now, my personal opinion is that I'm glad it didn't pan out, because when we see things like this, I don't think he would have been someone that I would back as a vice president. I don't think he would have been a good running mate for Donald Trump, because we're seeing that although, in my opinion, he talks the talk about being tough on crime, he doesn't seem to walk the walk. And we're talking about something so serious. I mean, murder. Yeah. Again, it doesn't matter if you are a Democrat or you're a Republican. If somebody kills your child, you want justice. And to find out, I think when you told me that, you'd contacted him, he seemed like he was going to get on top of it and do something.
I met him when he was campaigning in the first election, and he was very supportive.
But then dropped the ball. Right.
Well, we talked during the campaign. I had his phone number, his cell number, and the number changed the night of the election, or probably a couple of days beforehand. And letters and requests for appointments, all kinds of stuff have gone completely unanswered. And if you ask his office, what's the status of my petition to have the case moved? And I've submitted 3 with additional evidence each time over 5 years. They'll say it's still under review. And that's been 5 years.
Yeah. They want the NRA vote, and the NRA, most of the members do not believe this will stand your ground. Can tell us a little something about your son, Ryan, so that my audience can know who you are, who Ryan is,
Ryan, and by the way, just on the political side, I've been a registered independent for 50 years. I have equal disdain for the wrongs of the right and the left. I just don't vote party line. But as you said, Samantha, when it's your family member that's potentially injured, party politics goes out the window. You just want the government to act responsibly. We haven't seen that. We've seen irresponsible government down in Southwest Florida in the state attorney's office, and we've seen a governor that's willing to turn a blind eye to it because it serves his purposes as he runs for the presidency. In other words, he would rather focus on running for the presidency and getting a new job than staying and currently doing his current job.
Right.
Well, and I can say as a voter, from what we see now going on across the country with an increase in crime due to faulty policies and
Right.
soft prosecution, that's the last thing we would want is a president who doesn't uphold the law of the land, the Constitution, or the rule of law, especially with something like homicide. So I think he's showing his true colors, and I'm so sorry you're going through this.
Well, I appreciate that. If you look at the record, Ron DeSantis seems a lot less concerned about murder and a lot more concerned about fighting with Disney.
Right.
Ouch.
That's what,
It's amazing because in the big cities, you hear all these same complaints about the Democrat mayors and prosecutors not prosecuting
and
violent
it's
crime.
accurate. Yeah, I
Yet
believe
putting
that.
all these charges out of the blue to try to keep Donald Trump on the ropes. But you hear this about the Democrats. But what we need to really raise awareness is it's going on with the Republicans too in this case right here. And Sandy's a professor. He wrote a very good book about this, which we're going to have a free link to it. A free link. I'm pleading with my fans and my audience. Download this book, read it, spread it around, and raise awareness about this case. He's not trying to make a penny off this book. He wants to raise awareness of what Ron DeSantis is all about, and that the person who admits to killing his son is prosecuted for doing it.
Well, it's interesting you also mentioned the campaigning, because Donald Trump is clearly in the lead for the Republican. As a layperson, I'm not a political expert. He's clearly in the lead for the Republican nomination. The two closest to him are DeSantis and Nikki Haley. And DeSantis I think he's playing for something happens to Trump. He's an older gentleman and he has a health issue or he has a legal issue that removes him, and then that clears a path for DeSantis. Nikki Haley has a different path because if Trump wins, she could easily be his running mate. I have it on good authority that Trump will nominate you, Bill, or you, Samantha, for his vice presidential nominee long before he ever nominates Ron DeSantis.
Right.
So
I think it might be interesting if we can get this story, your story, Ryan's story, before the people that are going to have maybe another debate with DeSantis. So maybe they can say, how come you're not prosecuting this case? You know,
I'd love to have that be a topic. Believe me, I would.
Let's start reaching out to the other camps and see if they can run with this.
Great idea.
So Sandy, back to moving the venue, because clearly you're going to be at an impasse in that county. So she's not going to prosecute for her own political personal reasons.
Right.
Like, corrupt though we call it, and on the face, that's what it seems like, misconduct. To move beyond that and to get justice, what's your next move? Are you actually moving to a different venue, or is there a way to take it to federal court out of her hands?
There's no moving it to a different venue. She has refused to release the case. And my position has been, she ought to be happy. She's an officer, a law enforcement officer. She ought to be happy if it moves to another jurisdiction and it turns out that the new guy, the new reviewer says, nope, no crime here. She's vindicated. If on the other hand, they do find a crime and they prosecute it, she should be very happy that a murder that she didn't happen to catch is prosecuted. So she should be happy either way. She refuses to let it go from her county. He fought the governor's general counsel when we proposed just move it. And she adamantly fought and did not want that case to leave.
She needs to be disbarred, in my opinion.
She legally doesn't have the right to prevent you from having justice over your son's death. In other words, it sounds like you're saying she doesn't want to move it forward and prosecute it, but she also won't let it go. So she is preventing you
absolutely
from having closure and justice for your son's murder. And that being said, isn't there a motion to compel or something you can file to force her to release the case?
She's an elected official. Prosecution decisions are hers. But
prosecutorial discretion, but mandamus for abusing her oath of office.
It's an idea. She refuses to move the case. The only one that can step over her and either move the case or remove her from office is her pal, the governor, and he refuses to do it.
Right.
Unbelievable.
So my family.
It's shocking for any of us because we're seeing that although we'd like to believe in the state of Florida, in the United States, that if something like this happens, that justice will be done.
I
But
believe that.
based on what you're saying, on a whim, a prosecutor seemingly engaging in misconduct can say, "Oh no, I'm not prosecuting, and I'm not going to let the case go." You're not getting justice, Mr. Modell.
No, but my life is a cautionary tale. Just a middle American guy with a wife and kids, and 4-bedroom house and 2 cars in the garage and a little tiny boat. And we just went through life happily knowing or believing the government was protecting us. Then all of a sudden this kind of tragedy occurs, and we see the government can actually decide we don't want to do anything. And as a result, my life has become a cautionary tale. My life and what has happened to my family, my son's murder, the failure of the government to act, and the fact that we have no closure. We've just got this open problem with a murderer running free. That cautionary tale should scare every other family in Florida, because there's nothing between me and them. It's just bad luck.
And once they decided not to prosecute him, what was his name again? I don't have it in front of me.
I don't use his name.
Okay, so he started sending you disgusting emails also.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember that.
Yeah.
Please tell us a little something about your son so my audience can get to know your son.
My son was just a nice all-American kid. He went to school locally, business major, played sports, had lots of friends, traveled, worked in my industry for a little while. And then there was a coincidence that he happened to find out about a certain industry of pacemakers and the calibrations and all the things that go into those just weeks before we lost his mother to something very similar.
Right.
And when that happened, he said, I want to go study this because there are ways to prevent it so that other people don't have to lose their mother. And that's what he did. And he had finished school in Boston. He was done. He was interviewing. And that weekend, he had just gotten an offer on Friday. They were celebrating a friend's birthday, and they were celebrating his offer. On Monday, he was supposed to come back up to Orlando, meet with HR, and he was going to be starting the job shortly. He found out Friday he was coming up here Monday, and instead Saturday we had the tragedy, Saturday evening. So he was 48 hours from coming back home for good.
So my recollection is that so he was out with friends by the pool saying goodbye, and after this was over, in the middle of the night, the buildings look very similar. I saw the condominium.
Monolithic, they all look the same.
They're beautiful. They're luxury condos. So he was going to he made a mistake and he went to the wrong building. They all look alike.
He went to the right unit in the wrong building.
Yeah, the right unit, wrong building.
Right.
This guy and his wife are in there. This guy who has a reputation for carrying his Glock.
Oh, he's got all kinds of stuff.
I heard he smokes a lot of weed and drinks heavily, and there's allegations of it being a wife.
The neighbors have told me all kinds of stuff along that line. They've seen it.
Right. So, we don't know that he's ever been convicted of that. Let's just say that. It's, but so this guy who seems to be very unstable is in there, opens the door to your son and says, "Hey, you don't live here," and fill in the rest of the blanks if you can go over it.
And my son argued with him. My son had too much to drink, thought he was in the right place, was probably a little belligerent. They argued, and then the guy slammed the door shut, caught my son's foot in the door. That's fine. My son woke him up at 2 a.m. I've never disputed that stuff. Slammed the door shut and locked it. And my son left.
Right.
Now, under deposition, under oath, he claims he waited 4 minutes. I think we all know it was longer. Decided he wanted to do something about this. He was embarrassed. Got his gun, decided to play big shot. Went back out, found my son in a neighbor's yard with a hose washing the blood off his foot, seated on the ground facing the other way. No threat. It's a threat. It's a felony in Florida to aim a gun at someone that's not a threat. My son was on the ground doing nothing, facing the other way. So he had pursued him. He found him, and then he started yelling at him. And when my son turned around, he pointed a gun at him. And my son stepped towards him. The guy knew my son was drunk and was incapacitated. And my son took a step in that direction. And now he feared the problem he caused. And you can't do that with stand your ground. Right. I can't poke you on the shoulder 10 times when you turn angrily, say, "I'm afraid I have to shoot now." Can't do that.
Can't provoke.
Yeah. So that's
Well,
exactly,
I mean, the other component to it too, in terms of the guilty mind requirement, is I think, it seemed clear, in my opinion, that he knew Ryan had been drinking, Ryan was unarmed, and therefore there wasn't really a threat. And most men, if you're going to go talk to somebody, um, you go talk to them. You might ask them if they need help. Clearly not the
there
case
was
here.
nothing to
But
say. The police were on their way and said, stay put, stay in the house.
right,
He
and
was in his locked house, and I think the wife, didn't she tell the dispatcher, we know him, he lives nearby? I mean,
I don't know if she said that, but the cops told him, stay inside, we're on our way.
right.
Later
So
on,
yeah.
later on, they asked him, why did you go outside the house? And he said, to protect my wife. And they said, you're inside behind a locked door with a gun. How do you go
Right.
outside, open the door, and protect her there? And he didn't have an answer. But
And,
that was months later. That was weeks later. He would not talk to the police that night. He wouldn't talk to him, and he had nothing. He didn't say, look, here's what happened, and no explanation. He knew damn well he'd murdered somebody.
Well, I'm shocked he wasn't immediately arrested that night.
I don't understand it.
Samantha?
if you're even in a discussion, even in any situation, when you pick up a gun, especially after the door has been closed and locked, if you pick up a gun, you know the consequences of having to use it. So he seemingly pursued your son outside with the intent of using it even before he aimed it at him, and might have been embarrassed or realized, oh my God, it's against the law to aim a firearm at someone, so now I have to use it. I think he planned on using it before he even went out the door.
He may very well have, but that's a second and separate event. Stand your ground has to be one event. If I'm frightened, if you break into my house or attack me in my yard or even in a parking area somewhere, and I'm afraid, I can take action. I cannot leave for a while, come back later on and say, I'm still scared, so now I'm going to shoot you. It has to be one continuous action. And by going behind the door, locking it and putting at least 4 minutes by his admission. But my son, by the time he found him, was already 2 yards away, seated on the ground with a hose, washing his foot. So it's likely it was much more than 4, 5, 6 minutes. That separates the incidents. That removes stand your ground. There's just no chance for it.
He came out from behind a locked door. That's premeditated as well, I think.
That's how the police feel.
Yeah. From the door already having been opened, the offender knew that your son was not armed. So for him to go outside with a firearm, he knew he would be at a clear disadvantage. I think he knew he was going to use it. And so therefore, between disparity of force, your son was sitting down, he was unarmed. Yep. I think it's a clear homicide. So
you and the police.
So this happened in Fort Myers, and now we get indications that he has moved because of this case to West Palm area. We're not going to give out his address. So he's roaming the streets of West Palm.
The address, by the way, he sent me a lot of all kinds of ridiculous, threatening, lunatic emails. They're in the book, and one of the emails includes his address. So his address is in the book because it's one of the emails he sent.
And the book,
I should say, text messages.
And the book is free in the description. Get this book. Please add a comment and a thumbs up to this show. Tell everybody about this because DeSantis is trying to run for president, pretending to be tough on crime. This case proves that he's not. He's not what he puts himself out there to be. Right. He is just smiling for the cameras and giving people a hard time he feels are weak, and he's not cut out to be president. I was incarcerated, and he wasn't doing anything to help the nonviolent offenders get away from the social distancing. He could have put everybody, like a lot of Democrat governors did, put everybody out on house arrest for the last year of their sentence. I was held in another state, but I was a Florida prisoner. That state was releasing everybody nonviolent with 5 years disciplinary clean. I got approved to be emergency released, but they said, but because you're here for Florida, we have to get permission from your judge, prosecutor, or governor. Well, he refused because that was not his policy. So I almost died because of DeSantis. So I already don't like DeSantis for other reasons, but meeting you
better about him than you are.
Meeting you takes it to a whole nother level because he is, in my opinion, and again, these are not the opinions of YouTube, opinions of our guests and myself, is that he's a complete fraud. That's the way I look at it.
I've seen no evidence to the contrary. He's had opportunities to do the right thing and has continuously refused. A friend of mine is a large political donor. in Massachusetts. And DeSantis was doing some campaigning up there. And so they threw in a fundraiser and they invited my friend. And he said, I'll attend, but only if I get 10 minutes of FaceTime with him alone. And he met with him, reviewed and brought the case up to him. And DeSantis said, well, if there's new information, I'd like to see it. And at my friend's request, I printed copies of all the new information and summarized them, drove them to Tallahassee, hand delivered them to the governor's office. Like everything else, he was just full of it. There was no response. There was nothing.
The existing information is enough to get this guy prosecuted for premeditated attempted first-degree murder. What are the developments since then? I know there's a thing with billboards and the fact that he's running for president. So you made sure that you're flooding the zone with the story the best you can. I know the companies don't want to put everything on a billboard.
Well, first of all, we did the petition, and that's now up over 600 names. So there are 600 people, not only in Florida but elsewhere, that look at this and say it's a murder. Move the case. That's all we're requesting. Let justice actually occur. Beyond that, the governor was campaigning in New Hampshire, and was kind of over in the corner with just a few deep-pocketed guys, not taking general questions. And there's an AP reporter, and I'll keep his name out of it, but he said, Governor, if you step over here behind the podium, we can all hear your questions and answers. And he said, are you blind? I'm talking to people right now. People can hear me. Well, I thought that was a pretty arrogant statement.
Right.
And so I wrote an op-ed for the Orlando Sentinel entitled, Governor, Are You Blind? So I did that last October. And it got an interesting response. It did. Then beyond that, I've decided to run billboards in all the early primary states. The governor has put all his weight and all his resources into Iowa. He needs to come out of there hard and strong. And I've put up billboards in Iowa, and I've sent you copies of them. One billboard, I've got a picture of it actually up. You saw that. The other one, the picture was from an angle. If they're in the road, it's a tough thing. So I've got a proof that it's up. But what I sent you was a copy of the artwork. And there was a little bit of censorship in Iowa. They were a little concerned, so they were fairly conservative about it. But the message is clear. There's a book, there's a case, and the governor's not doing his job. The two billboards combined, the one in the first one does about 147,000 impressions monthly. But the second one is it's on an off ramp from one of the busiest highways in the city, and it's next to the biggest hospital in the city. That one gets 761,000 impressions a month. Together, they're just a little bit over 900,000 impressions. Now, granted, commuters may be seeing the same thing a couple days in a row. So even if you divide that number by 3, on a monthly basis, that should be seen by 300,000 different people. And then if you consider that Iowa only has 3.2 million people, where billboards in Des Moines are in front of, with good estimates, at least 10% of the state. And I think they should see that before the Iowa caucuses. So the billboard's up now, and it will be up through the Iowa caucuses. Now, the next state, go ahead.
Because they're electronic billboards, do you have the ability to say, hey, under our same deal, can you change the message and maybe put something like, why not DeSantis? Read this book,
The problem is there was heavy censorship. And so, yes, they are electronic. I could change them daily, but it would be a big argument every day. And the message I have now is the strongest. Now, I have the second primary state. Iowa is first with the caucuses now. They moved up. But the second state is the first primary, which is New Hampshire. New Hampshire is the live free or die state. They don't do censorship. Nobody scares New Hampshire residents. They're going to do what they want to do. So they put up the billboard. They mocked up some good looking artwork, and they put it up as I requested. And I've seen an online shot showing that it is up. But again, it's from a roadway angle. And that's difficult to come by.
What's the city and location it's in? I don't have
the city. It's on I-95.
I-95.
If you look in the southeast section of New Hampshire, to the south, New Hampshire is bordered by Massachusetts.
Right.
And then to the west, it's got some Connecticut and some New York, but or just New York, I guess. Connecticut's at the south. But north of, or I'm sorry, New Hampshire's bordered on the left side, the west side, by Vermont. But if you look at the distance, there's a little piece of New Hampshire that goes down to the seashore, and it's a little bit of a stub in between Massachusetts and Maine.
Got it.
And I-95 runs through there. The billboard, which gets at least 500,000 impressions a month, is on I-95 between the Mass border and the Maine border, which is probably 50 miles. So it's on there somewhere.
Right.
I think it's on the west, on the east side, facing northbound traffic. And you saw the artwork on it, and I know that it's up. And if this doesn't get somebody's attention, there will be other primaries. There will be other billboards.
So Sandy, getting back to the prosecutor.
Yep.
Because clearly it's unjust and there's a problem at that local level where you've got a prosecutor who just is rogue seemingly and decides what of the laws she will ignore and what she will uphold.
Correct.
So that being said, has the state bar addressed this?
State bar can never address anything against an elected official until they leave office. So if you're a career state prosecutor and you do something that somebody thinks is wrong your first year and you're reporting to the bar, but you have a 30-year career in there, it'll be another 29 years before they address it.
I think the last time we spoke, we kind of brushed over this, but maybe the possibility of a mandamus or a racketeering lawsuit or something. Have you ever?
I've looked at a bunch of them, and just nothing is holding up. Now, the state attorney, it's been a girls' club. It's a chapter in my book. They've all been appointing the successor to the Attorney General's office. There was Pam Bondi. There is Ashley Moody. Pam helped Ashley get into office, and Ashley wants to help Amira Fox get into office.
Right.
So there's a good likelihood Amira Fox wants to run for Attorney General. When she does, I will paper the state with books everywhere and billboards everywhere addressing some of these issues, and in a very solid, committed effort to kill her candidacy for the Attorney General, because the state of Florida needs something better than that.
Right. It's very cruel. It's not just incompetence. It's cruel and deliberate, really, what they're doing to you and your family.
Yes.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. I don't even know what to say at this point, other than we just need everybody to read your book and sign the petition. And we're going to try to get a lot more exposure this time, because on my end, I've stepped up the game in what I do. I, was relatively new about this almost a year ago. And then a few months ago when we did the first show. Now we're using other technology to enhance these shows, and hopefully we get a lot more exposure this time.
Well, fingers crossed. I appreciate the support, and I'm hoping we get enough viewership that we can create some pressure to force the governor to do the right thing. He may not do it for the right reasons, but I don't care why he does it. I don't care if he does it because he's come to his senses, or he does it because you and other good people have put enough pressure on him that he worries about his political standing. Either way, he just needs to move that case, and then we can address the prosecutorial misconduct afterwards.
Right. He's putting everybody in Florida in danger by allowing this guy to roam free still with the same gun. The same gun he killed your son with. As I understand, he has that back now.
10 millimeter with an oversized clip and a laser, as well as a flashlight on it. The police called it a hunting weapon. It's not a sport gun.
Sandy, if you don't mind my asking, I think it might help some viewers. How have you personally gotten through so much clear pain and heartache and frustration? What has helped you to cope on a daily, weekly, monthly basis throughout all of this? Would you have any advice to other parents who might be dealing with something like this?
I am on 4 or 5 support groups of parents who've lost children, parents who've had children murdered. And you start out just viewing, as just keeping an eye on those things, but eventually you feel compelled to tell the new people how those people that have been dealing with this problem longer have dealt with it. And first of all, for me, I've just channeled the frustration and the anger and the rage into a commitment to never let this go. And the murderer should always feel my hot breath on the back of his neck in lots of different ways.
If you feel comfortable talking or mentioning the names of those groups, so maybe we can bring some traffic to those groups also. Anything else you want to mention as far as support groups or,
they all have similar names. One is, I think one is Grief Without End. One is Parents, Grieving Parents. I don't have the names in front of me because there are 4 or 5 of them, and they're similar names, but they all are very important support networks. For me,
Facebook groups, is that what you're saying? They're Facebook?
Yeah, I could get you names. For me, there were no support groups. I just channeled the frustration, the anger, and the rage, and that's what I continue to do. But I certainly am moved by those people online that are going through it either with me or going through it earlier than at an earlier stage, and they want to know, what do you do about things, and how do you approach it? And there are things I do. I do not pay attention to dates. I lost my wife, and so there's a date of loss. There's a anniversary date. There's a birth date. There's Mother's Day. There's a bunch of them. And what happens when you get a day like that is you feel it coming about 2 weeks early. You start getting a little sad, and then it's got about 2 weeks hang time afterwards. So, you've got at least half the year that you could justify being sad, and that's not productive. It's just sad.
Right.
I have 2 of those. I have both my wife and my son. So combined, I could be sad most of the year. What I choose to do is ignore the dates. And friends of mine that used to send me texts on significant dates now know, because I always respond the same way. Thank you, but don't do it. I ignore the dates. So I don't pay attention. It's not as though if a significant date falls today,
right,
that it matters. Today is no worse than yesterday. Or no better than yesterday, and no worse than tomorrow, or any way you want to look at it.
Perpetual state of pain on anniversaries.
Right.
Especially.
What I prefer to do instead is, there were things that my wife and to some extent my son wanted me doing, and their personal things and their family things. And I do those things to honor their memory.
Right.
And just walking around sad and boggy on different days. So that's for me. I don't tell other people what to do. That's what I do.
I know Mary's stepfather was murdered around the holidays. So the holidays, and another family member of theirs was murdered on Christmas Eve. So the holidays are always very, very difficult for them, and it's just horrible to see it. So I get it. I understand that from witnessing it here. So
rather than be crippled by dates and by just, I don't know what to do with those things other than be sad that day. Rather than do that, I'd rather channel my energy into things that they wanted done. And family issues that need to be taken care of. I do that. And then I use the frustration and the anger, the rage. I use that to propel myself further in terms of finding different solutions, finding different ideas, different ways to move the case. So that's been my path. I don't recommend it to others. It's just, that's worked for me. I do try and make certain suggestions online with the grieving parents. On isolated basis. It's not all day long, but sometimes something comes up that I have faced, and here's what I did, and here's how it helped. But I don't discuss anything about that, because I think that's a kind of a sanctified zone. So the things I talk to those people about, those stay among us. They've walked in my shoes, and that's a special and especially unhappy group. And so I try and help out where I can if I think I have something specifically insightful, not just, well, me too, or anything like that.
Right. So in my life experience, and I have a faith, I am a Christian. I'm not perfect by any stretch, but a lot of the advice that I always give to people close to me that have been through something like you've been through, and it's just from life experience, really, and common sense and faith. I always suggest, that you maybe, you have to think what your loved ones would want for you. They'd want you to continue on and be productive and enjoy the rest of your life. And my rest assurance is that you'll see them again. But also in the context of missing somebody like that, you have to do stuff like you said with your other family members. You have to create memories. You have to, respect their memory, but you literally have to move on and then keep your fighting spirit. You never give that up.
I've read books on this. I've read books on this, Bill.
Yeah.
And you're saying kind of what I've come to. Excuse me. The books and the psychology books say you should always keep everything in front of you and be open to all of it. Right. And I can't do that. What I do is I compartmentalize. There are some days I play dad, There's some days I fight the case,
Right.
but I don't blend those days. I keep them separate and distinct.
There you go.
And
Samantha?
Sandy, could you, how's your petition going, by the way?
Over
Can-
600. So it
Okay,
continues.
so can you please tell people where they can go and sign the petition?
Thank you, Samantha. It's on change.org. If they just type in my last name, just type in on change.org, just type in Modell. They should see it. And there may be another one in there with someone with the same name, something entirely different. Just scroll down. There are one or two, and they'll find it. And I appreciate the support. They don't have to do anything other than just click and say, yeah, the case should be moved. This looks like murder. The case should be moved so we can all find out.
Republican or Democrat, everybody needs to sign this petition. We're going to try to flood the zone a lot better than last time, obviously. But we'd like you to download the book. It's free. Get an idea what's going on here. You know, this isn't a Republican or Democrat thing. This guy was told to stay in the house. He was safe with his wife with a gun. The door was locked. He went out and pursued Ryan, Sandy's son, and killed him. Why is he not locked up? I've been locked up for things when there was almost no evidence. This is plenty of evidence. What the heck?
The other thing I think we can do to write your congressman, because I think, especially for those of us who live in Florida, you have a right for your voice to be heard. We want justice. Governor DeSantis, we want justice in Florida. We don't just want talk. We want justice. So this needs to be addressed. I encourage everyone, write your congressman, sign the petition, send a letter to Governor DeSantis and tell him, because it could be any one of you, any one of us.
Yeah.
So let's get this moving forward.
Thank you, Samantha.
Let's do that. I think with that, we're going to wrap this show up. Sandy, thank you so much I know it's difficult to share this, but you have to.
Bill, I appreciate you having me on and providing so much support. Thank you. And thank you, Samantha.
No problem whatsoever. Samantha, God bless you and Mark for helping you with everything today. And Sandy, once again, thank you. And we're going to talk and try to get some more things going with this because this is ridiculous. And now there's going to be people paying attention because the election's coming up. And Ron DeSantis, in our opinion, at least in mine, is really being fraudulent in his representations to the voters. And this case illustrates it. So thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please go to that description, download the book, read it. Your comments, everything means a lot. Sign the petition. I'm going to have it on the screen, and I'm going to put it all across my social. And this will be the first show of the year for Steal the Spotlight Television is going to be this right here. So,
well, thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.